So
I think
you can start with introduction. The statement here, Karen gives us this phone number here. Yeah. So if you want to go back to the airport and you want to be sure that you get a taxi and you want to be sure you pay normal amount of money, yeah, which is around 40 Turkish lira, I think, yeah, then you can call that number. But the number is Turkish. So you have to ask your reception at the hotel to call that number and they arrange a taxi time for you. Okay? Just to be sure you all safely come back to your home tomorrow or Saturday or something. Okay, thank you. So please start.
So for those of you that don't know Béatrix, and that's probably almost nobody, but for the benefit of those who do not, I'll give you a brief introduction to Béatrix. Béatrix Barafort graduated as a software engineer in France and went on to accumulate substantial commercial software development experience and practice. Later, Béatrix joined a Luxembourg-based public research centre, where she has led the R&D related to process assessment and improvement based on the ISO 15504 standard for process assessment, mostly for software engineering and IT service management. Those of you involved in the standardization work will know that Béatrix is actively involved in standardization, particularly activities related to process assessment and service management. Béatrix is heading up an R&D group encompassing the TIPA initiative with an open framework for process assessment and a particular focus on IT service management. Thank you, Béatrix.
Thank you, Paul. So I know it has been quite long and very rich day, so we try to shorten a little bit and to have everybody alive for the social event. So I will go through a kind of journey about the TIPA initiative related to IT service management, and I will talk a little bit about the research center I'm working in first, before going from the problem that we had and that companies in the market were asking us until the TIPA assessment framework and some perspectives that we have today. So if you had seen me last year in Luxembourg, we were in the Public Research Center, Henri, and since the 1st of January this year, we have merged with another Public Research Center. And so now we have quite a major actor in the Luxembourg research, but we act as a RTO, Research and Technology Organization, and in a way we are in between compared to university and the markets. So you have some figures here. We are working various projects and very applied projects in order to transfer on the market some solutions. And there are 3 departments in our research center dealing with advanced materials, with environment and new technology for environment. And the department I'm working in, which is the IT for Innovative Services department. So where IT can enable and support some solution for the services. You know, Luxembourg is a particular service economy, and so we are dealing a lot with that. So before jumping a little bit more in TIPA, I'm going to tell you a little story. On Monday, 8th of September 2008, the London Stock Exchange, which is the 3rd largest stock exchange in the world, crashed for almost 7 hours. That particular day promised to be one of the most active days in the trading history. But then the market opened at 7 AM, like every day. But at 9:15, the trading system crashed. And it took people more than 6 hours and 45 minutes exactly, to restart the service and to start trading again. This crash was terrible, and it led to the loss of almost 3 billion euros in trading. So when you discover that your IT infrastructure of your processes cannot deal with such an event, at the moment it occurs, it is quite a vital situation. So there is another path anyway. There is a way to avoid this. There are various things to do to assess, to level, and to improve the processes in place. So this was my little story. But before going further, I wanted to ask if you have also some examples in your head that you can share that happened to you or to your company. Anything in your mind?
Starbucks this year had an IT system failure and they couldn't open 8,200 stores for a full day. They didn't say how much it cost.
They're making coffee, right?
Anything else? Yeah.
Is the friction of the IM5 launcher in 96 because of the software update?
And then, yeah?
Well, I had a presentation and I studied 220 incident reports for that.
Yeah, attended your presentation. It rang a bell. So it can be small problems, small service disruption, printers which are not working, or anything with your laptop, or something very big which costs a lot of money. So today we know that business needs IT, and IT is expected to deliver value to the business. So with this situation, we know that IT service management can support all this evolution and some complexity, not everything, but at least can support what happens around us. So what about IT service management? It's a field of activity in order to deliver and support IT services, from the design of the services, the IT services, to the delivery, the retrieval also of all the services. And all the activities have to be organized together in order to have the best situation. About IT service management, there are several frameworks, bodies of knowledge, with different practices. You've heard about COBIT, and with COBIT 5 lately, CMMI for services, also the ITCMF framework, the IT capability maturity framework, and you probably heard about ITIL, the IT infrastructure library too. So in order to manage your processes, to govern them, to successfully integrate the IT processes, you need something which is structured and a methodological approach. The IT infrastructure library provides best practices. Today it's probably the most used framework for IT service management, and it has started in the 90s, and at the beginning of the years 2000 it became more and more popular, and at least in Luxembourg and the surrounding area, in a way ITIL was introduced and became more and more used in the companies. You know, there are a few financial institutions and banks in Luxembourg, and quite a lot of companies, financial companies, use ITIL. But then, if you deploy ITIL with best practices, do you really know if you have done a good job? Do you really know how to improve IT processes, even with the support of ITIL? Can you measure the maturity of the processes? So there is the problem here, and we know that you can't improve if you can't measure, if you cannot know exactly where you are. And you need probably to measure on an objective way the maturity of IT processes. Just a remark for simplification, I use maturity instead of capability, but we are in the mindset of measuring on a maturity scale here. So with this background and this empirical problem, we designed in Luxembourg a research question in order to design an innovative and science-based framework for IT service management process improvement. So we wanted to provide a new solution with some innovation and added value, of course, for the companies, for the markets. So I'm going to talk now more about TIPA for IT. So the solution that has been proposed is the TIPA for IT framework. So first, the idea was to use a process assessment method based on the standard in order to have an objective, repeatable and trustful approach. So for the assessment approach, there is the ISO 155 of the standard, and now with the 33,000 series, which is the revised version of the 155 of the standard. A defined assessment process, some guidance, so in order to cover all the needs for knowing exactly where we are for IT service management processes and setting an improvement plan with some action recommendations behind. So for this journey, we've been through several steps for many years. We've been working with 15.504, first of all for software engineering, and then when the standard became generic for any kind of process, any kind of application in companies, with the introduction, as I said, and the use of ITIL, we determined that it was a solution that was interesting for companies, and there were some publications around these works some time ago now, and there was some design of the process models based on the first, well, the second version of ITIL, ITIL version 2. At the same time, there were some interesting works at ISO about IT service management with the ISO 20,000 standard with requirements, specifications for service management system. We had some presentation today about the implementation of ISO 20,000 in Turkish companies. And ITIL is providing best practices and ISO 20,000 some requirements and specification, but these are very close to each other. So we've been through the development of the models of the method for assessing, which is based on the standard. And as I told you before, as a research and technology organization, we've transferred on the market with a commercial partner, which is ITpreneur, for providing training courses on TIPA and the method and the support for it. So there are some updates of the method and so on. So this was also to provide an open framework, because I will come back on that, but very often there are assessment methods which are not that objective or repeatable. If it's homemade by some consultancy organization, sometimes we don't know exactly what is behind. And sometimes some companies were telling us the results are questionable. We need something which is stronger and trustful. So the fact to use an ISO standard was something very important that was validated by a community that was supporting us. in order to have this objectivity and repeatability, and also to have some comparable results, and to use again ITIL, which was a particular choice, in order to provide this assessment methodology for ITIL. So this is complementary, and this can be also used with other frameworks like COVID-5. Now there is a process assessment model in COVID-5, and there are processes which are really close. But for the users of ITIL, with the TIPA process assessment model, it is exactly the same vocabulary, so there is no translation in a way, and that was something important for this community of users. So then, regarding ITIL and process assessment, the method is unique, and it targets specifically this market. About the scientific aspects, particular attention has been paid on the design of process models, and I'm going to come back on that. And of course, we have experimented with various partners. I can see again that the red is not going on the on my screen, but not here. Never mind. So again, for objective results with a standard behind with the ISO 15504 assessment method, and the idea to have the standard descriptions of the processes to be assessed. And we've followed the design science research method with a problem stated at the beginning, and objectives definition of what we were going to have, some criteria for accessibility. So we wanted to have processes easy to assess, always with a repeatable aspects. We wanted also to have a certain level of quality of the process models, the effectiveness of the assessment approach, and the quality also of the assessment results. So for designing the process models, we've worked with various stakeholders in order to co-design the models, and we have described the method in a book which is published, and there is a toolbox which is quite simple in a way because it's just Word document and PowerPoint and this kind of thing, but it can be used very easily from anywhere. We have disseminated the result, and via some exchanges with the community at the ISO level, also with the standardization level, and with the demonstration of the results by experimentation and by iterating on the various artifacts for improving them. So we are continuously improving, I hope, the solution. Yeah. So as I told before, we wanted to ensure that the semantic work and the expert works for designing the process models were robust. So we've used a transformation process based on goal-oriented requirements engineering techniques. It enables to have clear view and derivation of the process model based on a collection of requirements from a standard, for instance, or from a best practices framework with ITIL. And according to the requirements or the information you have as an input, it can be a bit difficult to keep all the semantic and the need, all the expected results for each process and so on. So with this approach, we have a better view with a structure approach, and also we can communicate and validate with workshops with stakeholders with something quite visual in order to have our process models. And I can see colleagues here in the assistance, and there is also a presentation about using this approach for project management. It has been done. It has been used also in other contexts and other places. So I'm not going into detail about the process description result, but as required by the ISO 15504 standard, you have a purpose, outcomes, expected results, and practices, and all the approach has been derived from that. So in the IT infrastructure library, there are 26 processes with a lot of information, because it's a best practices framework. It is structured, but not as much as required by process assessment, ISO 15504 standard. So all the information was translated, but with the same vocabulary as ITIL. And you have here all the processes which are following the service life cycle defined in ITIL. So we are also extending in a way our works for process assessment models, because the maturity models, in order to have a view on what processes should be performed at what maturity level, and we have in a way extended this works for this. Again, following the requirements of the 15504 series, now the 33,000 series. Okay. So this is a summary with all the elements of the TIPA framework for ITIL. We have the global framework, the methods, with the project assessment that has to be followed, the brief description of the processes. There is a certification scheme for assessors, and the supporting toolbox. We have included the 3 classes of assessment. If you are familiar with SCAMPI, CMMI, you have class A, B, C. So this is equivalent, this is compatible in a way, and you can have more or less detail, and the confidence in the results can be a little bit different according to the different classes. If a company uses process assessment internally, then they can choose also what type of assessment they prefer for their context and costs and so on. And I go quickly on this. These are the phases of the TIPA project, so I'm not going into detail. That's very classic. That's a list of those, what we call the toolbox, with everything that can be used at the different phases of a process assessment project for ITIL. And there are questionnaires related to each process in order to be used by the assessors. But this can go on a broader use than simply assessment. And we had many people saying that's very useful, not only for assessment, but the assessment provides recommendations and the structure for an action plan. And we are ready to use, because in many IT communities, IT service management or information security and so on, many people are going to be trained for acquiring more skills, more competencies. But then when people come back in the company and for everyday tasks and improvement actions, sometimes they don't have all the tools, and some kind of checklist and questionnaires about what to do and then how to do with some more detailed practices with the IT infrastructure library, they find it quite useful. So this is a small example about a tool for estimating the workload for an assessment, and according to the scope and number of processes, and if you use interviews, you have some comparisons here, and that provides an idea of what to do for assessing processes. So we're using TIPA for other reasons I have told before. And before going to the last part of the presentation, I hope it's going to work. If you are fed up with my voice and if it works, we have a little testimony. Can you hear something?
Put the microphone to the computer.
Can you hear something?
Yes.
You can't hear.
We can hear something.
Okay, so just a quick view on the number of assessors and the countries. Again, the colors are red on my screen, so it's a bit strange, but you can then revise geography and see when it is darker, there are quite a lot of use of TIPA in Japan, North America, in Luxembourg, but it's so small that you cannot see. in the Nordics, in particular, also. And there is a TIPA community on LinkedIn. So this was for IT service management mainly, where we have developed this, and with all the scientific basis that we wanted in order to ensure the quality of the models, which was a really important asset for the adoption and the use of TIPA. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the process assessment approach and for improvement purposes can be used in any context, and there are various applications that we have already started to develop, and in Luxembourg, but also in the European at the European level also, there are a lot of new things at the moment related to e-archiving, so everything about document preservation, archiving, and all these kind of things. There has been a new law voted in Luxembourg, a new regulation where all the processes for e-archiving can be in a way certified, and some e-archiving providers have to follow this regulation, can be certified, and some approaches with a process model and assessing the maturity is something which interests a lot of actors, not only in Luxembourg, but also with the new regulation, which will be in force at the European level in July 2016. Information security is a big deal also, and there are many connections with digital archiving in information security. So we have a service ecosystem where assessment and improvement have a very important place, and with some process models which can be interconnected between them. It provides a lot of evidences for regulators and auditors, which are used to have a kind of binary approach, but here there is this other view provided by maturity of processes, which is of interest. So we have all the time in mind the key criteria for processes and the process models. As I said before, when we design the framework for accessibility, so it has to be easy to assess, the interoperability between systems of processes, service systems also. It can be used for ensure and demonstrate compliance and also completeness of requirements, and it can be applicable. So there are some works also at the ISO level about management systems in order to have some process models with a core content for process management, management systems, in order to be able to interconnect very easily. And when there are companies with multiple certifications, there was a presentation this morning about a Turkish company with ISO 9001, ISO 2701, ISO 20000, and there can be other ones. For e-archiving, that's another example, risk management and project management, and this is something which is enabling more easily the connection in order to be able to govern information and to control the quality of the systems, in particular in the service industry. So that was the talk I wanted to provide today, and I'm going to go quicker, and I'm very pleased to have been able to provide this talk tonight. Thank you.
I think we've time for a few questions, so anybody have some questions for Béatrix? We shall take Richard first, for obvious reasons, I think.
Yeah, I've actually, by purpose, I invited a few people to this conference who are overlapping. For instance, Alexander from Volkswagen IT, and then this CSOF company that uses also for medical device data or medical data of patients, the 20,000, and then we have you, and then there is also Turkish Telecom here, just to mention that. Innovise, Turkish Telecom software department. So what I see and observe is we talk about the same, but it's still a little bit different. For instance, when we do certifications in the industry, some of them use the 1554-8, like the ISO 20000, the adapted version for spice assessment. I support TIPA, as you know, because it's more closer to the ITIL originally, and it's naturally the extension from the ITIL to an assessment model. And as we know, the standard community always sometimes does something else than the practice community did, and then you have to merge it again. So my question is, how do you see the merge between what the standard community did and what the reality of ITIL is, and what TIPA supports? That's for me one question. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that the practitioners prefers, it's my responsibility to say that, but from all the companies we've been in contact and using ITIL, ITIL is really a best practices framework. So it is easier for them on a day-to-day basis to set up activities, processes, and to improve them. And then the ISO 20000 standard is for certification. just provides requirements, but it doesn't provide all the detailed information that ITIL has. So it is complementary, but it is not the same objective, the same target.
Yeah, the point is only that we got in conflict a little bit. I have, in my own experience, had similar situations, that now the 15.4 community and also in the new version developed their own assessment model, yeah, which
exactly my question.
Yeah.
Where it is ISO 20,000 SPICE conform, and we apply to our suppliers. I have next week assessment. I have rejected it, and for me this is a really big gap that we have now, because this is certified by Intex, verified at 2014, and so I think it's also valid and is in use also. And I think this is not really good if we are setting up so many different things with the same idea behind.
I think this is good, but it indicates that there's a demand. So if you have more than one created in parallel, as can happen, Alexander, I think it tells us that it confirms that there's a need, I think.
Yeah,
but the remerges that.
I think we should, I would provoke it, that there should be a collaboration, right? Because the minimum we need is a TIPA and this SPICE published model comparison. Because what I remember is the TIPA is closer to ITIL. If any large industry is done before ITIL, then, which is more likely because it was the only existing perspectives I read before, it's easier to maintain it this way and fulfill the 20,000. So that is more financial institutions, and then we have a key infrastructure, but at the end we need on the market a collaboration.
We had a lot of questions and demands about mapping between ITIL, TIPA, and ISO 20,000. So it depends also on the targets and on the needs of the companies, because you are requested to have some certifications, but other companies are not. And financial institutions, at least in Luxembourg and the surrounding area, they are not targeting ISO 20,000 certification or even SPICE certifications, but they really need to improve, and now to show with some regulations. And there are the supervisory institution in Luxembourg, but in other countries. And this kind of approach can help them. So I really think there are complementary approach. For knowing the standardization word and how the standards are also done, I think there should be less standards in a way, in order to simplify the approach for the companies.
Yeah, Beatrix, you know, I'm sitting somewhere in the middle, because the point is, what happened is that you know us and EuroasiaSPI, and you know Michael Reiner.
Yeah.
And then of course we got in touch with Intax, and meanwhile EuroasiaSPI is the registered certification provider for the Intax for the non-automotive assessment things. So there are certificates handed out at VW at the moment with the signature of Michael Reiner.
We apply to our suppliers.
And and on the other hand, we support you. So my suggestion is again, we need a collaboration, because otherwise, if VW says they have a lot of suppliers, all your IT must be compliant with that model and that certificate, which then actually our group is even signing. Then we are in contradiction with what we're doing. And my suggestion is really that I know your work, it's really good work, that you find an acceptance of your model by a mapping, so that when the VW says you have to do it, they will not reject your model, right? So that's a recommendation we have to go for, because we have here a strategic issue, which unfortunately has evolved in the last year, because EuroasiaSPI got into the role beginning of this year.
We have started with the automotive SPICE in the development phase, and in the other part of the life cycle we use this. So we have an entire SPICE level for the suppliers. If they deliver both parts, development and service, then we can say, okay, first we're coming with the automotive SPICE, later we come with the IT SPICE, And if we have different, we can also rank them. If we apply this.
Yeah, that's important because we need to be on one strategy, and I don't want to sit on two chairs, right? And I'm supporting Michael because Michael is our president and I'm in the backup in the management. So I have to know I'm not splitting myself in two directions because then I'm getting schizophrenic. Yeah?
Or cognitive.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to add also is that there are many companies.
Who's talking now?
Sorry, Béatrix. Maybe Béatrix wants to just say some more on that, I think.
I like the social media. Me too.
Sorry, I think Béatrix just wants to say something in response.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to add that there are a lot of companies also which are not seeking for certifications or stempel.
Yeah.
And that was also something very important with providing something completely aligned with ITIL, because that was not existing on the market. That was also our, at least in Luxembourg and the surrounding area, there are a lot of SMEs, not so many big companies, and there was really this need also.
Yeah, I think what it is, you are very strong in the financial area, for sure. Yeah? And you have spread around the world by 263 assessors. And you remember that we also signed up to be a supporter of your TIPA, yeah? As you remember. The VW Volkswagen is more in the automotive area. So now we get two things on the world. They will not compete with you because you have different customers. But we will spread in two different worlds, right? And now we have one certificate that goes with the automotive, but influences all IT departments of automotive, and then they get a certificate from ECQA. And then we have one world with you, with the TIPA, yeah? And where we know each other very well, anyhow since years also, yeah? And you spread in the banking area, but we talk about the same and it looks different. So the minimum is we have to, on a strategic level, probably think a bit, yeah, of collaborating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Comment that because you have to understand that these models also develop. Present automotive spice is not the same as present 15504, for instance. So we have the differences between these models, but of course, on the larger scale, it doesn't actually matter from the company point of view if you improve your processes based on this ITIL or ISO 20000. So it basically, in big picture, it's the same results or benefits that you gain. So yeah. I wouldn't make that big difference between these models. So we have always these kind of differences. It's natural development of these models also. Yeah,
it's about recognition, you see, because if they do something and then suddenly one of their customers gets a VW assessment on that field, or the other way around, there must be some level of what you have, what they have, and the joint recognition, because otherwise you start to fight each other on the market. Because you have a spread out, they start with a spread out, it will meet somewhere. Yeah? And before it meets, it's good to have some common opinion. Right? But that's
okay.
Okay, thank you, Richard, Alexander, and Timo. I think we've one. Did you have something else, Richard, you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. We definitely have one more question. We'll take two more quick questions. This gentleman first.
It's a small question. Could you please come to the slide 21, please?
21, is it?
21, exactly. My question also, there's a life cycle depiction in that picture. Design science research method. Is it generic spiral model life cycle model, or is it related with Richard Huber's information systems design and regulation methodology?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
Maybe you can speak up a slight bit, maybe.
Okay. Is this a generic spiral life cycle model you have followed, or is it related with Richard Huber's information science?
It's a generic one to illustrate the
design kit. Thank you very much. Thomas, I know you have a question.
No, I want just to support Richard from another point of view. You see, when you are part of the assessor community, there are so many organizations trying to certify assessors, and and there is no roof on the top of it. So then you can say, okay, what's the model? Then you have, the industry never gets aware that this assessment is something valuable. The industry never gets aware that it's a happy something, because there is some guys of TIPA, there is some other certification schemes, there's Index, there's video activity. What I think is the more these assessor communities are split.
Maybe it's a Tower of Babel problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, wait.
It's really the same as with different certificates.
Oh, yeah.
You know, then you have just look, there's a whole bunch of certificates, but you do the same job.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Thomas. As Richard's getting increasingly thirsty looking, but Alexander, please, if you can close with one question. Yeah, and maybe so Béatrix can hear as well.
It's
about this different.
Just 1 second, Thomas. Okay. Alexander has one final question.
One final.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we want the Babylon Tower with different hierarchies and certifications, because at the end we don't want to pay for the same thing 20 prices for the same thing. So this is the reason why we select, for example, this SPICE model, because we have SPICE assessors in-house, many principles which are allowed automatically to do this. So we want to reduce costs in certification on external companies. That's the idea behind. So we don't like really that we have to certify in each small organization some assessors. This is not the idea behind. We want one thing, and then we pay once or whatever we want.
Yeah, I know. But I know also that the same requirements are fulfilled by both kind of assessors.
Yeah, it's about joint recognition of both sides, because the index which we have has now 1,200 assessors, and we have companies like Volkswagen. So I think we should agree something. Yeah. Good.
Okay, thank you very much, Béatrix.